What if the universe isn't just, a collection of disconnected facts, but maybe a single unfolding story? For centuries, science and philosophy have often felt like separate languages, right? Each trying to make sense of different pieces of reality. But today, we're diving into a really groundbreaking framework by Philip Lilien. It dares to suggest there's one unifying language beneath it all. I mean, everything from the chaos of the Big Bang right down to the complex thoughts inside our own heads. Our mission on this deep dive to extract the core insights from his, well, frankly, profound work, The Five Levels of Multilectic Metalogic Philosophy. And this isn't just about abstract theories, this is about a comprehensive system, one that models the emergence of order, complexity, even intelligence, from what initially looks like pure randomness. So get ready, because we're about to see if all these pieces can truly fit together into something, well, breathtakingly coherent.
That's precisely it. And what's truly profound about Lillian's approach, particularly within his unified coherence theory of everything, the UCTE, is its audacious promise. This deep dive, hopefully, will illuminate how structure, coherence, and intelligence aren't just accidental byproducts, things that just popped up somewhere along the cosmic timeline. Instead, Lilien proposes them to be intrinsic, like built into the very architecture of existence itself.
Wow.
It's a bold claim, absolutely. And we're going to meticulously explore how he substantiates it, step by step. He demonstrates a universe with what seems like an inherent drive towards greater order.
So let's peel back that first layer. The name itself, Multilectic Metalogic, it sounds incredibly complex, maybe even a bit intimidating. What exactly is it at its core?
Yeah, it does sound like a mouthful, doesn't it? But think of it like this. Our normal computers, they run on simple on or off binary logic, right? Zeros and ones. Lillian's multilectic metalogic is like a whole new operating system for the entire universe.
Yeah.
Much, much more advanced. It's not just zeros and ones. It's a dynamic, layered, recursive metalogic. It basically tries to explain how the universe literally learns to organize itself, how it grows from raw chaos into incredible complexity. Its grand ambition, as Lilien really lays out, is to model how coherence, complexity, and ultimately intelligence emerge, step by step, from that initial raw chaos. And the ultimate goal, to integrate literally everything into one unified framework.
Everything.
Everything. So its purpose is to offer a new unifying architecture of logic that goes beyond the traditional fragmentation we often see, between scientific disciplines, philosophical schools, even metaphysical inquiries. It's really an attempt to bridge all those gaps with a single, comprehensive logical structure.
That's an astonishing vision, a universal operating system. Okay, so before we dive into the different levels of the system, what are some of the key foundational concepts, the absolute must-knows, to even begin navigating this? I've seen terms like coherence field and resonance loci, which sound incredibly fundamental.
Absolutely. You've hit on the bedrock concepts there. Let's start with the coherence field. Imagine it as a kind of hyperdimensional field. And by that, I mean it isn't confined just to our familiar three spatial dimensions or even linear time. It's deeper. Its primary role, according to Lilien, is to sustain order, structure, and resonance across all of time and space. He posits this as absolutely core to his unified coherence theory of everything, the UCTE, that overarching idea of a universe driven by coherence.
So it's not just connecting things, it's actively organizing them.
Exactly. Its significance isn't just that it connects things. The truly mind-bending insight here is that Lilien posits this field isn't merely a passive medium, like the air sound travels through. He suggests it's an active underlying force woven into the very fabric of the cosmos. And it's constantly pushing reality towards greater order and complexity, almost like the universe itself has a built-in growth mindset, if you want a metaphor.
Huh. A growth mindset for the universe.
Kind of. It's the mechanism that links quantum systems, mediates fundamental forces, and crucially explains how order emerges out of chaos. Lilien argues that without it, the universe would simply remain a chaotic jumble. It wouldn't build anything.
Okay, so it's like an intelligent, organizing fabric underlying reality. That's a huge concept. And if that's the fabric, then what are these resonance loci you mentioned? Are they points on this fabric?
That's a great way to put it. If the coherence field is the universe's underlying hum, maybe a constant background vibration, then resonance loci are like the spots where that sound gets really, really loud, concentrated points of vibration. Think of them as the sweet spots in this cosmic fabric, places where energy naturally gathers and stabilizes, creating everything from a tiny particle to an entire galaxy, maybe even conscious thought.
Wow, so physical things and maybe even ideas.
Potentially. They're profoundly significant because Lilien proposes they govern the organization of everything we observe, from the vast structures of galaxies down to the minute organization of subatomic particles, and maybe even the intricate processes of consciousness. They are where the potential of the coherence field actually becomes manifest, actualizes into specific, stable entities. It's a fascinating way to think about it, like the universe itself is humming, and where the hum gets loud enough, something becomes.
That's a truly fascinating image, the universe literally humming, and where that hum intensifies, something solidifies. It almost makes me think of those moments in our own lives, when disparate ideas suddenly click into a coherent insight. Is Lillian suggesting a similar resonance is happening at every single scale of reality?
That's certainly the implication, yes. The model suggests a universality to this resonance principle.
Now, you also mentioned hyperdimensional layers. This is where my brain starts to stretch a bit. Are these physical dimensions like length, width, height, time, or are they something more conceptual?
That's an excellent question, and it's a really crucial distinction to make. When Lillian refers to hyperdimensional layers, he's generally talking about higher-order dimensions that extend beyond our familiar four-dimensional spacetime. But maybe don't think of them as physical places you could, visit. It's probably better to think of them as deeper, invisible blueprints, like the hidden code of the universe that allows for the incredible complexity we see.
Oh, okay. More like layers of organization.
Exactly. They form recursive coherent scaffolds and are often modeled as conceptual layers of existence, sometimes exhibiting fractal-like structures. Their significance is huge because these are the layers where coherence fields are thought to propagate. They connect phenomena across vast scales, from the quantum realm all the way up to cosmic structures, and they actively contribute to the universe's emergent properties, the things that arise from the system as a whole. They represent the deeper underlying architecture that allows for the profound interconnectedness we observe, essentially enabling the universe to build upon itself recursively, layer by layer.
So these layers are where the fundamental instructions for coherence really operate, almost like the background programming. Okay. And then there's the term anegentropic coherence. I know entropy is the universe's tendency towards disorder, things breaking down. So this sounds like it's a direct opposite. Is Lillian suggesting the universe actively fights against disorder?
You've got it exactly right. Anegentropic coherence describes the process of increasing order and complexity. It's achieved specifically, according to Lillian, through resonance alignment. This means it actively counters the natural tendency towards entropy, towards dissolution and decay. This is a vital concept because it suggests a fundamental drive within the cosmos itself. Lillian proposes that this inherent process is what drives the emergence of life, the development of intelligence, and the formation of complex universal structures like galaxies.
So it's not just chance.
He argues it's not just chance. It implies a cosmic push, an inherent tendency within reality towards greater and greater organization rather than simply dissolving into uniform chaos. It pictures a universe that actively builds itself up, almost with a kind of purpose towards self-organization and increasing complexity.
This is all starting to paint a picture of a really dynamic, evolving universe, not just a static collection of physical laws. So Lillian describes this whole journey through what he calls the 5 levels of multilectic metalogic. How do these levels work together? Is it like a straight line, a linear progression, or is it something more nuanced?
It's a really unique progression, actually. You could think of it maybe like a ladder, sure, but it's a special kind of ladder. Each rung is also its own self-contained logical domain. And crucially, each rung recursively forms the foundation for the next one up.
Ah, okay, so each level depends on the one before it.
Precisely. This creates what Lillian terms a coherence cascade. Each level represents a different mode of emergence, a different way reality organizes itself, building complexity and order upon the logic of the preceding one. It's a dynamic, evolving hierarchy that aims to take us from the most basic, undifferentiated state of pure potential all the way to ultimate universal integration. It's a continuous unfolding, where each stage paves the way for the next, revealing increasingly complex forms of coherence.
Okay, let's unpack these levels one by one, starting right from the very beginning. And speaking of that undifferentiated state, here's where it gets really interesting, I think. Level 1, Dialectics, the logic of chaos. It sounds like the absolute starting point, the primordial soup before anything really begins to take shape.
It is, in a very profound sense, the seedbed for everything else. Dialectics is defined as the logic of primordial chaos, pure randomness, and absolute incoherence. Its fundamental characteristic is that it lacks any predictable structure or coherence whatsoever. It represents the initial conditions before any form of symmetry or order emerges.
Just nothingness, or potential.
More like pure potential. Think of it as the ultimate state of possibility where everything is undefined. a vast, infinite ocean of potential without any boundaries or forms yet. Its crucial role in multilectic metalogic, and this is key, is that despite its apparent randomness, it acts as the seedbed for all the higher-order logics that follow. It contains the inherent potential for coherence, hiding within its seemingly formless state. This is a bit counterintuitive, right? Chaos isn't just an absence of order in this view, but actually a prerequisite for order to emerge later.
So even in absolute chaos, there's a latent potential for order. That's quite a twist on how we usually think about chaos just as destructive or random. Can you give us some concrete examples of how Dialectics applies in different fields, like from the cosmic scale down to maybe the everyday?
Certainly. It has surprisingly broad applications once you look for it. Yeah. Let's consider a few. Cosmology. In cosmology, Dialectics represents that primordial chaos of the very early universe. Think about quantum fluctuations, tiny random energy variations that are theorized to have existed even in a pre-Big Bang framework or immediately after. These were random, incoherent energy distributions that, paradoxically, laid the groundwork for the emergence of all subsequent coherence and structure. They're the raw, unstructured potential from which everything else sprang.
The ultimate blank slate.
Pretty much. Then, quantum systems. Dialectics models the inherent uncertainty and randomness we see in quantum states before a measurement is made. The probabilistic wave function describing all possible states a particle could be in represents this kind of Dialectic behavior. It's pure potential until interaction forces a specific outcome.
Okay, that makes sense.
Biological systems. In biology, Dialectics manifests in things like genetic variation and the underlying randomness of mutation. This random shuffling is the raw material natural selection acts upon. Without this chaotic variation, evolution couldn't happen. So this randomness is absolutely essential for adaptation, allowing life to explore countless possibilities.
All right, the engine of evolution needs that randomness.
Precisely. And even social systems. For social systems, Dialectics can represent periods of profound upheaval, think revolutions, systemic breakdowns, major crises. These are moments where established structures dissolve into apparent disorder, creating immense uncertainty and unpredictability. However, Lilien suggests they often serve as a precursor to radical structural transformation. Out of such chaos, new social orders can arise, often in completely unexpected ways.
Like a forest fire clearing the way for new growth?
Exactly, that's a good analogy. And maybe technological systems, too. It can represent the often unpredictable development of new technologies and their disruptive impact. Think about the early internet, or AI development now. Innovation frequently arises from periods of chaotic experimentation and unforeseen breakthroughs.
That makes perfect sense. So from primordial quantum phone to a societal revolution or even tech innovation, chaos is the fertile ground, the starting point. Okay, so once we have this raw potential, this Dialectic soup, what comes next? How does the first glimmer of order begin to emerge from it?
The next step up the ladder, level 2, is dialectics, which Lilien describes as the logic of opposition and synthesis. This is a concept with deep historical roots, particularly in philosophy, think Hegel, but Lilien applies it much more universally. Dialectics models systems through duality, contradiction, and the eventual resolution of tension. Its core characteristic is the interplay of a thesis, an idea, a force, a state, and an antithesis, its opposing idea, force, or state. Their interaction, their struggle, produces a synthesis, which is a new, often more stable or complex outcome that resolves the initial tension.
Okay, so thesis, antithesis, synthesis. Just remember that from philosophy class.
Exactly. This is where systems begin to exhibit a recognizable form of order, specifically through the resolution of these inherent tensions. It introduces the very first steps of what physicists call symmetry breaking. This is crucial because breaking symmetry is what leads directly to the emergence of specific structured forms out of the undifferentiated chaos. In the overall metalogic framework, dialectics builds directly on Dialectics. It takes that raw randomness and begins to organize it into opposing forces. Then, through their resolution, it forms the very first steps towards structured, coherent systems.
So chaos provides the raw material, the random possibilities, and then dialectic starts to shape it by putting things into dynamic opposition, which then leads to new, more structured forms. It sounds like a constant push and pull driving things forward. Can you give us some examples of this foundational process in action across different domains?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
This dynamic is surprisingly common once you start looking for it through this lens. Cosmology. Think about the very early universe again. The formation of matter-antimatter pairs perfect opposites that often annihilated each other, but slight imbalances led to the matter we see today. Or consider the ongoing interplay between the force of gravity, which pulls things together, and cosmic expansion, driven by dark energy which pushes them apart. These are profoundly dialectical forces operating on a cosmic scale. The resolution of these opposing forces over billions of years leads to the emergence of vast structures like galaxies and the cosmic web.
A cosmic tug of war.
Pretty much. Then quantum systems. Particle-wave duality is a classic example. A quantum entity can behave as both a particle, localized, and a wave, spread out, two seemingly contradictory states. Concepts like superposition, where a particle exists in multiple states simultaneously, and entanglement, where particles remain linked regardless of distance, often resolve into definite, observable states only through the act of measurement or interaction. That interaction acts like the synthesis, collapsing the duality.
Right, the measurement forces a resolution.
Correct. And biological systems. Think about competition between species, or even between different traits within a species. This creates a dialectical process of survival and extinction, driving adaptation. Even within an organism, maintaining homeostasis, a stable internal environment involves constantly resolving internal contradictions, like regulating temperature or blood sugar.
Constant balancing acts.
Always. And of course, social systems. Historically, contradictions between social classes, like in Marxist theory, conflicting ideologies, or different models of governance are powerful drivers of historical change. Political and economic systems are constantly evolving through the dynamic resolution of opposing forces, different interest groups, and competing viewpoints, leading eventually to new societal structures or policies.
Yeah, history is full of those clashes.
And finally, technological systems. There's often a tension between technological advancement and societal adaptation. New tech emerges. Thesis, society struggles to adapt or finds downsides. Antithesis, leading to regulations, new norms, or even better versions of the tech. Synthesis. Think about the evolution of social media, for example. Also, competing technologies often resolve into dominant paradigms like VHS versus Betamax, or different electric vehicle charging standards today.
That's a powerful way to frame progress and change, isn't it? Not just as a linear march forward, but as this constant dynamic dance between opposites. Okay, I think I'm following the dance between thesis and antithesis. But Lilien doesn't stop at two opposing forces, does he? He introduces a third level, trialectics. Now that immediately makes me wonder, how does adding a third element fundamentally change the dynamic? Does it just make it more complex, or does it unlock entirely new forms of order that duality can't explain?
That's the key question, and yes, it's a crucial leap because it moves beyond simple opposition and resolution. Trialectics is defined as a triadic logic, which means it introduces a third, mediating or contextualizing term to the interplay. Its characteristics include the dynamic interaction of thesis, antithesis, and this mediating element. Instead of just resolving contradictions into something new, it often leads to systems existing in a dynamic balance, where contradictions are harmonized or held in tension by the third element.
So it's not just conflict and resolution, but maybe harmony or stable complexity.
Exactly. This level is particularly good in modeling things like feedback loops, recursive processes, and the profound interdependence we see in many complex systems, think ecosystems or economies. Its role in the overall Metalogic framework is really significant because it introduces coherence as an emergent property, not just of two forces interacting, but of these more complex threefold interactions. This new level of emergent coherence then paves the way for truly holistic systems to emerge later on. It shows how stability and harmony can arise from more complex, multi-layered dynamics than simple opposition.
So it's not just black and white fighting or even turning into gray. It's like adding a third color that creates a whole new palette, allowing for more stable, complex patterns. How does this more nuanced triadic logic play out in the real world? Can you give some examples?
Definitely. This triadic structure appears in many complex systems. Cosmology. The universe, as we currently understand it, isn't just driven by matter versus expansion. Trialectics helps us understand the dynamic interaction of baryonic matter, the ordinary stuff we see, dark matter, providing gravitational scaffolding, and dark energy, driving accelerated expansion as a crucial threefold interaction that governs cosmic evolution. The complex feedback loops between these three components are thought to be what stabilize the large-scale structure of the universe, preventing it from either collapsing too quickly under gravity or expanding into a diffuse, empty state too fast.
The big three of modern cosmology.
Right, then biological systems. Consider the interaction between an organism, thesis, its immediate environment, antithesis, and the symbiotic relationships it forms with other species or microorganisms, mediating element. Think of gut bacteria in humans, or mycorrhizal fungi connected to plant roots. These form a deeply interconnected triadic system. Classic feedback loops, like predator-prey dynamics, are also often more complex than just two players. They involve mediating factors like resource availability, the third element, which drive evolutionary stability and resilience over time.
Okay, so the context matters hugely.
It does. And social systems. Think about the interaction of individuals, thesis, institutions like governments or corporations, antithesis, and the surrounding cultural narratives or shared values, mediating element. These three constantly shape each other. Cooperative feedback systems like democratic processes, ideally involving voters, representatives, and a framework of laws norms, are meant to sustain societal stability through this kind of triadic dynamic.
Right, it needs all three pieces working together.
Yes. And technological systems. In modern technological design, the interaction of hardware, the physical device, software, the operating instructions, and the human user, interacting with both, forms a classic triadic system. The success of a technology often depends on harmonizing these three elements. Feedback loops, such as continuous user input, bug reports, and iterative development cycles based on that feedback, are what constantly enhance functionality and drive the evolution of technology, creating products that are far more refined and user-friendly than their initial versions.
That really deepens the understanding of how complexity rises and stabilizes. It's not just about opposing forces clashing, but often about a third element that brings them into a dynamic harmony or a functional balance. This sounds like it inevitably leads toward systems that are truly integrated, functioning as a coherent unit. And that brings us neatly to level 4, hololectics, the logic of the whole.
Indeed. Hololectics is defined by Lilien as the logic of holistic integration, coherence, and interdependence. Its primary characteristic is that it emphasizes the coherence of the system as a whole over just focusing on its individual components or their pairwise interactions. This is where we really start to account for emergent properties, those qualities of a system, like consciousness in a brain or the wetness of water, that are not simply reducible to the sum of its parts. You can't find wetness in a single H2O molecule.
The whole is greater than the sum of its parts.
Exactly that cliché, but formalized. Hololectics also explicitly integrates concepts we discussed earlier, like resonance dynamics and those fractal-coherence fields. The role of hololectics in Metalogic is to advance beyond the interactions described in trialectics by modeling systems as inherently coherent and interconnected entities. This allows for the systematic study of highly complex self-organizing systems like living organisms, ecosystems, or even potentially conscious minds, showing how entire systems function as unified, integrated wholes.
So this is where the system starts to really gel into a unified entity, with properties that you couldn't predict just by looking at the individual pieces or even the three-way interactions. Where do we see this holistic logic most clearly at play in our world?
It becomes apparent when we look at large, complex systems. Cosmology. At this level, the universe itself can be described as a holistic, self-organizing system. We observe how galaxies, vast cosmic filaments, and the empty voids between them emerge not as isolated entities, but as deeply interconnected structures within this grand cosmic web. Lilien suggests that coherence fields are what unify space-time curvature and the distribution of all matter and energy, revealing the cosmos as one vast integrated whole.
Seeing the forest, not just the trees.
Precisely. Biological systems. The Earth's biosphere is a perfect example. It can be modeled as a holistic, interconnected system where energy, matter, and information flow continuously between living organisms and their environment. Ecosystems, for instance, exhibit emergent coherence, they self-regulate, maintain biodiversity ideally, and show resilience against disruptions, demonstrating how life on Earth functions as one grand, interconnected, self-sustaining system. Think of Gaia theory concepts here.
Right, the planet as a single system.
Yes. And social systems. Society itself can be treated as a holistic system with interconnected economic, political, cultural, and technological subsystems that all influence each other in complex ways. Phenomena like globalization, the spread of information through global networks, or collective cultural shifts represent emergent coherence at a societal level, shaping the whole system.
Like the global economy, maybe.
That's a good example of a complex, interconnected subsystem with emergent properties. Technological systems. Also, modern technologies are increasingly integrated into holistic systems. Think of the Internet of Things, IoT, where countless devices, sensors, and platforms interact seamlessly to create smart homes or cities. Or consider global communication networks. Emergent properties such as advanced artificial intelligence arising from complex networks reflect this system-wide coherence, demonstrating capabilities that individual components or simple interactions could never achieve on their own.
Wow, that's a powerful shift in perspective, seeing everything from the structure of galaxies to the functioning of AI as these emergent, coherent wholes.
Yeah.
Okay, so if hololectics brings everything into a unified whole, showing how systems operate as one, what could possibly be beyond that? That brings us to the very pinnacle, level 5, Omnilectics. And this is where, if we connect this to the bigger picture Lilien is painting, it promises to truly unify everything.
Indeed, Omnilectics is presented as the ultimate culmination of Lillian's entire framework. It is defined as the logic of universal inclusivity. Its most critical characteristic is that it integrates all the prior levels, chalectics, randomness, dialectics, opposition, trialectics, mediation harmony, and hololectics, holism, into a single comprehensive metalogical system. It's the logic that contains all other logics.
The logic of logics.
In a way, yes. It's proposed to operate across all dimensions, uniting randomness, order, interaction, and coherence into one seamless whole. It ultimately reflects the infinite potential inherent in those hyperdimensional coherence fields we talked about earlier. Its role in Metalogic is therefore to provide the most inclusive and comprehensive framework possible, one capable of modeling the entirety of existence, from the very first moments of primordial chaos all the way up to a state of universal coherence. This is truly the culmination of the entire logical cascade, encompassing the universe's full journey from undiluted potential to complex, structured realization.
So it's the grand unified theory of logic itself, containing and contextualizing everything that came before it. That's an incredibly bold claim. How does this ultimate level of universal inclusivity manifest in the practical applications we've been discussing? What does it truly mean to see the cosmos, life, society, technology through this final omnilectic lens?
Applying the omnilectic lens aims for the most comprehensive understanding. Cosmology. At the omnilectic level, the entire cosmos, from its chaotic origins billions of years ago to its current state and future potential involving hyperdimensional coherence, is integrated into a single unified framework. This is where Lilien proposes a true unification of the fundamental forces, the various dimensions, both spatial and hyperdimensional, and all emergent phenomena like galaxies, black holes, life, under one overarching hyperdimensional metalogic. It's the universe seen as one vast, infinitely complex, yet ultimately coherent and interconnected system.
The ultimate big picture.
The ultimate. Quantum systems. Omnilectics attempts to unify quantum mechanics with hyperdimensional coherence. It integrates quantum randomness, chalectics, wave-particle duality, dialectics, entanglement hololectics, and measurement interactions possibly involving observers, trialectics, hololectics, into a universal framework. Quantum systems are described not just as isolated phenomena, but as microcosms reflecting these universal coherence dynamics, potentially linking the very small to the very large.
Connecting quantum weirdness to cosmic structure.
That's the ambition. Biological systems. Here, life itself, in all its forms, is integrated into this universal framework. Biological intelligence, rather than being seen as an isolated fluke on one planet, is viewed as a natural extension of cosmic coherence, a specialized expression of the universe's inherent drive toward self-organization, complexity, and maybe even awareness. Evolution, then, is reframed as a continuous process of increasing alignment with universal hyperdimensional resonance, a constant striving for greater order, adaptation, and complexity on a cosmic scale. Life participating in the universe's unfolding.
So life isn't separate, it's part of the universal logic.
That's the idea. Social systems. Omnilectics integrates humanity and its evolution into this hyperdimensional framework. It suggests that social evolution, in its highest forms, perhaps achieving global cooperation, sustainable practices, and deeper understanding, aligns with these universal principles of coherence. It might even envision a truly unified global society, not just as a political ideal, but as a natural reflection of this underlying universal coherence, a harmonious system arising from the integration of diverse elements, perhaps working towards a kind of planetary consciousness.
A cosmic destiny for society.
Perhaps a potential, if aligned with these principles, and technological systems. Finally, technology, viewed through the omnilectic lens, becomes more than just a collection of tools for human convenience. It's envisioned as potentially becoming a universal instrument for consciously aligning human activity with cosmic principles. Advanced concepts like mature quantum computing or theoretical coherence engines, if ever developed, might embody this ultimate integration of randomness, quantum bits, structured logic, algorithms, and holistic function, complex problem solving, potentially acting as interfaces with the deeper coherence of reality itself. maybe even allowing us to consciously tap into that universal operating system.
That's truly comprehensive. It's
Yeah.
like Lilien has drawn a logical map of the entire universe from its very start to its potential finish, encompassing the smallest flicker of randomness to the largest cosmic structures, and even our own place within it, all unified under one metalogic. It's a lot to take in. Okay, so these 5 levels give us this really profound philosophical framework, right? A way to conceptualize how reality might unfold step by step from chaos to universal coherence. But how does one actually model these grand ideas? How do you test them or use them predictively? This is where the math comes in, isn't it? Because without a formal mathematical basis, it risks remaining just really interesting, maybe even beautiful philosophy.
Precisely. And this is where Lilien truly distinguishes his work, moving beyond just conceptual description. He doesn't stop at the philosophical analysis. He rigorously extends the framework with distinct, yet crucially interconnected mathematical models and equations. These equations are specifically designed to describe the fundamental properties or relationships between each of the 5 levels and within them. This is how we attempt to move from a philosophical treatise to a system with potential predictive power and the ability to quantify these incredibly complex dynamics. It provides the necessary tools to move from what if to potentially how much or under what conditions, giving us a formal language to measure this proposed cosmic unfolding.
He actually starts right at the bottom, trying to model chaos with math. That seems like a contradiction in terms. Can you give us a general sense of what these mathematical formalisms look like at the lower levels, chaolectics, dialectics, etc., before we get to the ultimate unifying equations at the top? Without completely overwhelming us with Greek letters and complex symbols.
Understood. Let's definitely focus on the purpose and the meaning behind the math, rather than getting lost in the symbolic notation itself. So for chaolectics, the goal is modeling that initial randomness and the conditions before order emerges. Lilien uses mathematical tools like probability distributions. These basically quantify the likelihood of different chaotic states occurring. They help us understand the probability landscape, what kinds of configurations are more or less likely to emerge just from pure randomness. He also employs concepts from fractal geometry, specifically fractal dimensions. These mathematical tools describe how complex, surprisingly intricate self-similar patterns can sometimes emerge even from processes that look completely random on the surface. They reveal hidden structure where none was initially perceived. And he applies equations from classic chaos dynamics, like the famous logistic map. These demonstrate mathematically how very small changes in the initial conditions of a chaotic system can lead to wildly unpredictable, yet still fundamentally structured, outcomes over time, the essence of the butterfly effect. It's about finding the underlying order within apparent disorder.
Okay, so math can describe chaos in terms of probabilities and underlying patterns.
Exactly. It quantifies its nature. Now for dialectics, the focus is on formalizing that opposition and synthesis. Here, he uses equations that describe the dynamic interplay between a thesis and an antithesis, and crucially, how their interaction mathematically generates a specific synthesis. Think of it as a mathematical way to model the balancing or resolution of two opposing forces and predict what new, more stable state emerges from their conflict. These are often coupled with mathematical models of differential dynamics. These are equations that help predict how systems evolve over time as these opposing forces continuously interact and resolve. They can map out the trajectories of change driven by dialectical tension, leading to potentially predictable patterns of development or oscillation.
Modeling the push and pull over time.
Precisely. Moving up to trialectics, which introduces that mediating third term. The math here naturally expands to incorporate triadic dynamics. These equations allow for the simultaneous interaction of 3 distinct elements, thesis, antithesis, mediator, and model how their combined feedback leads to a harmonized dynamic balance, rather than just a simple resolution or a new state replacing the old ones. This is complemented by equations describing recursive feedback loops. These mathematically describe how the output of a system, resulting from the triadic interaction, feeds back into its own input, creating continuous cycles of self-regulation, adaptation, and potentially increasing complexity over time.
Capturing those cycles of influence.
Yes. And he might use resonance modulation concepts, with equations designed to quantify how well these 3 elements harmonize or resonate together. They can literally measure the coherence overlap, or the stability that arises when the 3 parts form an integrated functional system. Finally, getting towards the top, for hololectics, which models unified wholes and those emergent properties. Lilien introduces what we can broadly think of as coherence field equations. These mathematical expressions describe the strength, structure, and propagation of a unified field that underpins a holistic system. They attempt to explain how all the parts come together and function synergistically as a coherent whole. There are also mathematical models specifically for holistic emergence. These aim to show how global properties or qualities arise that aren't present in the individual components themselves, but only appear when the system functions as an integrated entity. It's about mathematically quantifying that more than the sum of its parts phenomenon.
That's incredibly helpful. It really makes it clear that the math isn't just tacked on. It's absolutely essential for putting Lilien's philosophy into action, for actually measuring and modeling this unfolding coherence he describes.
Okay.
But the real magic, you said, the ultimate integration, happens mathematically at the omnilectic level. Here, Lilien posits that the equations bring everything together into one picture. Let's try to dive into these three big ones he proposes, really understanding their essence, what they're trying to capture.
This is indeed where the entire framework culminates mathematically. These are the equations that attempt to formalize the core ideas of the universal coherence theory of everything. They are complex, but we can grasp their core function. The first is what we can call the multilectic integration equation. This one represents the unified framework itself.
U for unified.
Exactly. Imagine a grand master equation, maybe like a cosmic calculator designed for coherence. It literally sums up the contributions from every single one of those 5 logical levels we just discussed, the logical structure and the resonance contribution, from Chalectics, Dialectics, Trialectics, Hololectics, and Omnilectics. It performs this summation within a specified hyperdimensional space or manifold, M, meaning it tries to account for influences and structures beyond our normal spacetime using a special kind of calculus involving fractal measures, DFDEX.
Okay, summing up all levels and higher dimensions.
That's the essence. The crucial insight here is that this equation allows us, in theory, to precisely quantify the overall stability and coherence of any complex system, be it a galaxy, an ecosystem, maybe even a society, by integrating all its inherent logical modes simultaneously. It's a way to attempt to put a number on the total interconnectedness of everything within that system, revealing how randomness and structure, opposition and unity all play a specific measurable role in the system's overall health, function, and evolution.
So it's a way to get a single measure for the total coherence, taking into account all the underlying logical principles that are simultaneously at work within any given system. That really is a unified framework on paper. What's the next big equation in this omnilectic toolkit?
The second key equation is the universal coherence field equation, Quniversal. This one is specifically designed to describe how order itself propagates throughout the cosmos across all scales and dimensions.
How coherence spreads, basically.
Precisely. This equation is all about mapping how coherence, that fundamental organizing principle, ripples and spreads through the universe. Think of it as summing up all the individual layers or contributions of coherence across vastly different scales, represented by N, from the subatomic all the way up to the galactic and beyond. It integrates the contributions of resonance, Rn, at each scale with specific coherence field tensors. These tensors are essentially mathematical descriptions of how coherence interacts and maintains itself across various dimensions. It also explicitly considers how these dynamics unfold over time, DTN, and within those deeper hyperdimensional spaces, DHN, we mentioned earlier.
So it tracks coherence through space, time, and these extra dimensions?
Yes, across all relevant domains. The core insight here is that every scale in the universe contributes its own distinct layer of coherence to the overall universal field. This equation demonstrates mathematically how order doesn't just exist statically in one place. It actively propagates and integrates across vastly diverse scales and multiple dimensions, culminating in a truly unified picture of universal order. It models how stable order is maintained and actively propagated through the universe's inherent structure, influencing in principle every aspect of reality.
That's an equation that basically maps the flow and maintenance of cosmic order itself, a truly profound concept to try and capture mathematically. Okay, what's the third and final piece of this omnilectic mathematical puzzle?
The third major equation is the Omnilectic Equation, O itself. This one represents the ultimate fractal resonance unification. This is arguably the most comprehensive and complex of the three.
O for omnilectic. Makes sense. Unifying fractals and resonance.
Exactly. This is the ultimate equation Lilien provides in this framework, attempting to truly bring together fractal geometry, representing inherent structure and scaling, resonance, representing dynamic flow and interaction, and coherence, representing stability and integration, into one all-encompassing mathematical expression. It's structured as another massive summation over different scales. Each term in the sum describes the unique contribution of fractal structures, F, N, resonance, Rn, and coherence interactions, AChem, DRN, DTN, at that specific scale of reality. Crucially, there's a mathematical term often called a spatial damping factor included. This is really important. It essentially means that while everything is interconnected in principle, local coherence and interactions tend to have a stronger, more immediate effect on a given point x relative to a reference point. Contributions from more distant points or vastly different scales diminish rapidly, based on the fractal dimension dn relevant at that scale.
So nearby things matter more, which sounds realistic.
It builds in that locality principle, yes. The key insight of this particular equation is its explicit unification of inherent structure, represented by fractal geometry, and dynamic flow, represented by resonance dynamics, into a single comprehensive framework. It demonstrates mathematically how these two fundamental aspects, static patterns and dynamic interactions, combined create emergent order across all scales of existence, from the smallest quantum fluctuations perhaps, right up to the largest cosmic structures. This equation is specifically designed to model large-scale, complex phenomena, such as galaxy formation, the structure of the cosmic web, or perhaps even universal resonance patterns, providing a profound mathematical lens for understanding the cosmos as a self-organizing, multi-scale fractal resonance system.
Okay, so these equations, U, Q universal, O, they aren't just abstract ideas sitting in a physics paper to be admired for their mathematical elegance or complexity. Lilien argues they actually have concrete applications, right? How do these powerful mathematical tools potentially help us understand the world around us in new, tangible, maybe even measurable ways?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
This is where the rubber really meets the road, theoretically speaking. This is where the philosophical framework, formalized by the mathematics, aims to gain practical traction. Lilien's work provides specific, tangible examples, thought experiments or potential modeling approaches, demonstrating how these universal equations could provide deeper insights into the very systems we touched on earlier when discussing the 5 levels. It shows their potential utility in fields ranging from the cosmic down to the microscopic, and even into the realms of biology, technology, and society.
Okay, let's start big again with the universe itself. How does the Omnilectic Equation, O, the big one, unifying fractals and resonance, help us specifically in cosmology? For example, in modeling the emergence of large-scale structures like galaxies and the cosmic web we see.
Right, the goal here is to understand precisely how galaxies, galaxy clusters, and that vast filamentary cosmic web emerge and organize themselves out of the smoother conditions of the early universe. Using the Omnilectic Equation, O, Lilien suggests we can model this process more deeply. The fractal scaling factor, Fn, within the equation is key to modeling the recursive self-similarity we observe in cosmic filaments, how similar patterns of clustering appear at different scales when we zoom in or out on maps of the universe. It mathematically explains how structure repeats, suggesting a deep, self-organizing principle is at play across vast cosmic distances, driven by underlying fractal logic.
Capturing that web-like pattern mathematically.
Exactly. Then, the resonance contribution term, Rn, aims to capture the intricate gravitational and energetic interactions, particularly between dark matter, which forms a gravitational scaffolding, and baryonic matter, the ordinary matter that lights up as stars and galaxies. This part of the equation describes how galaxies don't just form randomly, but emerge as dense, stable resonance points within a larger cosmic coherence field. They become the cosmic hotspots where energy and matter preferentially gather and stabilize due to favorable resonant conditions.
So galaxies are like resonant peaks in the cosmic field.
That's the picture it paints. And finally, that spatial damping term we discussed becomes crucial here. It directly predicts how coherence and gravitational influence diminish with increasing distance across the vast cosmic scales. This mathematically explains the existence of the huge, relatively empty voids we observe in the cosmic web regions, where coherence is low, contrasting sharply with the dense, interconnected filaments and clusters where coherence and resonance are high. The full Omnilectic equation integrates all these contributions across different scales, revealing galaxies as these coherent, resonant hotspots embedded within a larger fractal structure.
That's incredible, the idea that we could potentially use one equation to mathematically model the intricate structure of the entire observable universe based on these principles of fractals, resonance, and coherence. Okay, let's swing to the other end of the spectrum, the incredibly small world of quantum systems. How might the universal coherence field equation, Q universal, help with something as practical and challenging as stabilizing quantum coherence, which, as you said, is absolutely crucial for building functional quantum computers?
Yes, improving quantum system stability is arguably the major hurdle in building large-scale, fault-tolerant quantum computers and secure quantum communication systems. Quantum states, or qubits, are notoriously fragile and easily disturbed by their environment, losing their quantum properties, a process called decoherence. The universal coherence field equation, universal, offers theoretical insights into tackling this. The coherence field tensor component, kin within the equation, could be used to describe the stability and integrity of the qubits themselves within the quantum computer's architecture. A high value for this tensor would mathematically represent a state of strong coherence, ensuring minimal decoherence. This means the qubits could maintain their delicate quantum properties like superposition and entanglement for longer periods, even during complex computations, thus preventing errors.
So quantifying the quantumness and its stability.
Essentially, yes. Then, the resonance contribution term, Rn, could model the entanglement between qubits. Entanglement is that crucial resource where qubits become linked, acting as a single system. The equation could provide a mathematical basis for optimizing these entangled connections, designing quantum circuits that leverage entanglement most effectively to perform complex calculations far beyond classical capabilities.
Managing the entanglement mathematically.
Right. Furthermore, those hyperdimensional terms, DHN, become particularly relevant here. They can be used to account for the often subtle but destructive external influences, things like stray magnetic fields, thermal vibrations, cosmic rays that bombard a quantum system and cause decoherence. By modeling these environmental interactions as influences occurring within a higher dimensional context, the equation might allow physicists to better factor them in, predict their impact, and perhaps even engineer ways to mitigate them or shield the qubits more effectively.
Shielding them from higher dimensional noise.
In a conceptual sense, yes, modeling the noise sources more comprehensively. The potential outcome is that by understanding how to mathematically maximize the universal coherence field, universal, for a given quantum system, quantum coherence could be significantly stabilized. This would drastically improve computation efficiency, reduce error rates, and pave the way for the powerful quantum technologies we envision for the future.
So it's about using this framework not just to describe quantum systems, but potentially to engineer them to be more robust and powerful. Okay, turning now to the living world, biological systems. How might the first big equation, the Multilectic integration equation, help us model something as complex as ecosystem stability?
Understanding the intricate interplay that creates and maintains ecosystem stability, resilience, and emergent coherence is a huge challenge in ecology. The Multilectic integration equation, which sums the contributions of all 5 logical levels, provides a potential framework for tackling this complexity. The various logical levels integrated in the equation can be applied directly to ecosystem dynamics. For example, the Dialectics component, L1, could model unpredictable random events like genetic mutations within species, or chaotic environmental shifts like sudden droughts, floods, or volcanic eruptions that disrupt the system.
The random shock.
Exactly. The Dialectics component, L2, could model the competition between species for resources or territory. The trialectics component, L3, is particularly relevant for capturing intricate predator-prey dynamics, or symbiotic relationships, through its triadic interactions where, say, predator, prey, and vegetation levels all influence each other in feedback loops. The hololectics component, L4, would capture emergent properties like the overall biodiversity or resilience of the ecosystem. And the omnilectics component, L5, could reflect the global stability and interconnectedness of the entire ecosystem, perhaps even its role within the larger biosphere as a unified, self-regulating whole.
Modeling all the layers of interaction at once.
That's the goal. Then, the resonance contributions associated with each level would quantify how various interactions like pollination, nutrient cycling, energy flow through trophic levels, or semiotic exchanges contribute to the overall system coherence and stability. This reflects the delicate balance of resource availability, consumption, and cooperation that keeps an ecosystem functioning and thriving, showing where its harmonic interactions lie.
Measuring the health of the interactions.
Yes. And the integration over the fractal field, DFX, could describe how ecosystem stability, biodiversity patterns, or the effects of disturbances propagate across different spatial scales, from a single patch of forest to a whole watershed to an entire biome, potentially revealing self-similar patterns in ecological resilience. The overall integral, representing the unified whole, aims to quantify the total stability and coherence of the ecosystem. This could offer profound insights into how we can better understand ecosystem dynamics, predict responses to change, preserve biodiversity, and enhance resilience against environmental shocks like climate change.
That's a potentially very powerful tool for conservation biology and understanding our planet's intricate life support systems. Okay, let's shift gears again to technological systems. You mentioned a really futuristic idea earlier. How could the universal coherence field equation, Quniversal, potentially lead to something as radical as instantaneous error-free communication? That sounds like pure science fiction.
It definitely borders on science fiction based on our current understanding. But Lilien's framework allows for speculation on such possibilities. The theoretical goal would be to enable communication that is essentially instantaneous and perfectly reliable, potentially by leveraging these hypothesized coherence fields in ways we haven't conceived of yet. Here's how the universal coherence field equation, Quniversal, might theoretically apply. First, the coherence tensor would model the stability and integrity of the communication channels themselves. By mathematically maximizing this coherence, the idea is you could ensure minimal data loss, distortion, or noise during transmission, leading to incredibly reliable information transfer. It's like ensuring the signal remains perfectly clear and strong, regardless of distance or interference.
Perfect signal integrity.
Theoretically. Then the resonance contribution term, Rn, is where it gets really speculative and innovative. This term describes the alignment of the communication signal's frequencies or properties with underlying hyperdimensional resonance fields. If such fields exist, and if signals could be made to resonate perfectly with them, Lilien's framework might suggest that this alignment could enable effectively instantaneous transmission. The idea is it might bypass traditional physical constraints like the speed of light limit in vacuum by propagating the information through these higher-order conceptual dimensions where distance might have a different meaning.
Whoa. Okay, that's the leap. Communicating outside normal space-time?
That's the extreme theoretical possibility hinted at. And the temporal dynamics term, DTN, would account for the precise synchronization needed for such advanced communication systems to work in real time, ensuring that signals sent and received are perfectly coordinated, which is absolutely crucial for any seamless global or even interstellar network relying on instantaneous data transfer. So the model, in essence, provides a theoretical mathematical underpinning for exploring the possibility of hyperdimensional communication systems with near-instantaneous transmission capabilities, a genuine potential game changer for future global connectivity, if proven possible.
That is definitely the stuff of science fiction potentially bleeding into theoretical physics. Mind-blowing. Finally, let's bring it back to us, to social systems. How do these grand ideas, perhaps specifically the Omnilectic equation, help us analyze and maybe even predict the dynamics of global stability or instability in human societies?
The goal when applying this framework to social systems is ambitious: to analyze and potentially predict the complex dynamics of global societal structures, perhaps seeking pathways toward greater harmony, sustainability, and stability. The Omnilectic equation, O, with its integration of fractals, resonance, and coherence, provides a unique theoretical framework for thinking about this. The fractal scaling term, Fn, could model the hierarchical and often self-similar structure of human societies. We see patterns of repeating forms of organization, power dynamics, communication networks from local community groups to city governance to regional bodies, national governments, and up to global institutions like the UN. This term helps visualize and potentially quantify how these patterns of organization repeat and interact across different levels, forming a kind of social fractal.
Seeing the patterns from local to global.
Exactly. Then the resonance contribution term, Rn, would attempt to quantify the myriad cultural, economic, political, and informational interactions that occur between individuals, groups, corporations, and nations. This term describes how social coherence, collective stability, shared understanding, cooperative action emerges from the constant interplay of cooperation and competition, alignment, and conflict within society. It could theoretically identify where resonant hubs of common ground, shared purpose, or effective collaboration generate stability and progress.
Measuring social harmony, in a sense.
Or disharmony. It aims to quantify the dynamics, and the spatial damping term offers a particularly crucial insight for global systems. It could explain why localized conflicts, economic crises, or social disruptions might diminish in their wider influence if global coherence, interconnectedness, and shared stabilizing structures, like international law or economic interdependence, become sufficiently strong. It suggests that a robust, overarching global coherence could effectively dampen localized disturbances, highlighting how positive interconnectedness might foster stability and resilience, making the global whole more resilient than the sum of its potentially conflicting parts.
So global connection could potentially smooth out local problems.
That's one potential implication. The overall Omnilectic equation, O, when applying conceptually to society, provides deep theoretical insights into fostering global stability. It suggests focusing on balanced interactions, strengthening positive resonances like shared goals, managing negative ones like conflict, and promoting the coherent integration of diverse societal subsystems, potentially offering a kind of abstract roadmap for seeking more harmonious coexistence on a planetary scale.
So, okay, what does this all really mean for us? We've journeyed through these 5 intricate levels, we've touched on the complex mathematics designed to model them, and we've explored some truly mind-bending potential applications across cosmology, quantum physics, biology, technology, and society. But stepping back, this feels like much more than just a scientific theory or a mathematical model. It feels like it's offering a fundamentally different way of looking at existence itself, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. You're right, this framework isn't intended merely as a set of equations to solve specific problems. It fundamentally challenges many of our ingrained assumptions about the nature of reality, about order and chaos, about consciousness, even about time. It bravely attempts to integrate deep philosophical concepts, questions about unity, purpose, emergence, with cutting-edge scientific understanding, particularly from physics and complexity science. And in doing so, it leads to some truly breathtaking and perhaps controversial implications about the nature of the universe and our place within it. It's definitely a lens through which the universe appears far more interconnected, dynamic, and perhaps even inherently driven towards complexity than we might typically imagine.
One of the core concepts in physics that seems relevant here is symmetry breaking and emergence. We often hear about symmetry breaking in the context of the early universe, like how the fundamental forces, gravity, electromagnetism, etc., are thought to have frozen out or emerged from a single unified state as the universe cooled after the Big Bang. How does Lilien view this process within his grand framework? Does it align with that standard physical picture, or does he add a unique layer from his multilectic perspective?
Lillian's view definitely aligns with the general concept from physics, but expands upon it, integrating it deeply within his coherence framework. Symmetry breaking, in its essence, is that crucial process by which highly coherent, simple, symmetric states, where everything is basically the same in all directions or aspects, transition into more complex, less symmetric systems. Think of a perfectly smooth, undifferentiated ocean surface, high symmetry, suddenly developing complex waves and eddies, lower symmetry, or a perfectly uniform field of energy, high symmetry, condensing into discrete particles like electrons and protons, lower symmetry.
Order emerging by breaking uniformity.
Exactly. Now, Lilien proposes that this fundamental process, occurring at all scales, is driven by something specific he calls asymmetry resonance operators. These are theoretical operators, embedded within the coherence fields that actively enable the emergence of our familiar reality, things like time having an arrow, space having dimensions, the distinct fundamental forces, and all the different particles from previously hypersymmetric, undifferentiated states of pure potential. It's Lillien's proposed mechanism for how structured order arises from pure, undifferentiated potential. In his view, it's not just a random event or a simple consequence of cooling. It's an orchestrated process driven by these specific resonance operators interacting with the underlying coherence fields. It suggests an active resonant mechanism guiding the universe's evolution from undifferentiated oneness into the incredibly structured diversity we observe all around us.
Wow, that makes the birth and evolution of our universe sound less like a purely random, chaotic explosion followed by gradual cooling, and more like an ordered, perhaps even guided unfolding, a system actively pulling itself into complexity through resonance. Okay, and speaking of fundamental concepts, let's talk about time again. Lilien talks about temporal multivectors, which sounds far more complex than our simple, intuitive linear progression of past, present, future. What exactly does he mean by a multi-axial representation of time? Is time not just one thing in this model?
It is indeed a profound shift from our conventional, everyday understanding of time. Our normal experience, and much of classical physics, treats time as a single linear arrow, consistently moving from past to future at a steady rate. But Lillien's concept of temporal multivectors proposes a much richer, multi-axial representation of time, suggesting it's far more complex and interactive than we usually assume. He suggests time itself might have multiple facets or flavors, including potentially linear time, T1. This is our traditional familiar experience of time, the clock ticking forward, cause preceding effect in the sequence, the one we intuitively grasp and measure. Cyclic time, T2. This axis accounts for the recurrent patterned oscillations and cycles we observe everywhere in the cosmos and nature, things like seasons, planetary orbits, day-night cycles, biological rhythms, perhaps even economic cycles. It's the time of repetition and recurrence. Quantum time, T3. This refers to the strange, non-local, probabilistic nature of time as it might manifest in quantum systems. Think about quantum tunneling, where particles seem to bypass time, or entanglement, where connections seem instantaneous regardless of distance. It suggests a more fluid, less rigidly sequential aspect of time at the quantum level.
Time behaving differently at the quantum scale.
Potentially. Then he includes dimensions linked to his core concepts, coherence time, T4. This dimension would describe the flow or propagation rate of hyperdimensional coherence itself, how quickly order establishes and spreads across those higher conceptual dimensions. It's the timescale relevant to the universe's fundamental organization, resonance time, P5. This axis would capture the harmonic dynamics and rhythmic interactions occurring across different dimensions and scales. It describes how resonant frequencies align over time to produce stable structures or coordinated activity. It's the time of universal rhythms and harmonies.
So time itself has layers related to coherence and resonance.
That's the idea. The significance of this multidimensional view of time is profound. It suggests that time isn't just a static, passive backdrop against which events unfold. Instead, it actively interacts with the coherence and resonance fields, fundamentally impacting how we perceive and understand progression, evolution, causality, and perhaps even consciousness. It paints a picture of a far richer, more complex tapestry of temporal experience, suggesting that our everyday linear perception might just be one slice, one projection of a much larger, multifaceted temporal reality.
That completely redefines how we might need to think about time if this model holds any water. It's not just one river flowing, but maybe a whole complex delta of interconnected flows, each contributing to the universe's overall unfolding. Okay, and then there's the anthropic principle. We often hear it discussed in cosmology, usually in terms of the universe appearing suspiciously fine-tuned with physical laws and constants that just happen to allow life, and therefore observers like us, to exist. But Lilien seems to take that idea and extend it quite significantly. How does he reimagine our role as observers in the universe?
Yes, the anthropic principle in its various forms traditionally points out this apparent fine-tuning. If gravity were slightly stronger, or the charge of the electron slightly different, stars wouldn't form or atoms wouldn't be stable, and we simply couldn't be here. It often leads to debates about multiverse theories or even hints of design. Lilien's extension, however, takes a radically different, more participatory angle. He proposes that observers, conscious entities like us, don't just exist because of the convenient fine-tuning of the universe. Instead, he suggests that observers might actively shape or influence reality through their very interaction with these fundamental coherence fields.
We're not just results, we're participants.
Exactly, flips the script. This suggests that the emergence of complexity, intelligence, and consciousness is not merely a happy accident allowed by the laws of physics or a fluke of cosmic probability playing out over billions of years. Instead, it implies that these are fundamental, perhaps even intrinsic, properties of the universe itself, part of its inherent drive. It suggests that purpose, or at least an inherent tendency towards increasing organizations, structure, and maybe even awareness, is somehow embedded within the very fabric of existence rather than being an external imposition or a purely random outcome. Our consciousness in this provocative view isn't just a passive reflection of an external reality, but an active participant in its ongoing co-creation and unfolding through our connection to these underlying fields.
So our presence isn't just a lucky result of the cosmic lottery, but potentially an integral part of the process itself. We're actively participating in shaping reality through our connection to these universal coherence fields. That's truly mind-bending stuff. And finally, Lilien speaks of something he calls the Great Emergence. What exactly is this ultimate concept? Is it like the Big Bang or something more continuous?
The Great Emergence is presented as a central, perhaps the culminating concept in Lilien's unified coherence theory. It describes the monumental ongoing transition from that initial state of undifferentiated symmetry, the primordial chaos, the state of pure, unbounded potential before structure existed, to the complex, structured, multi-layered reality we observe and inhabit. It's analogous to cosmogenesis, yet the birth and evolution of the cosmos itself, but Lilien seems to frame it as a continuous unfolding process, not just a single past event like the Big Bang. The significance here is that this great emergence encompasses the creation of everything structured, the dimensions of space-time, the fundamental forces, all the particles that make up matter, seeing them all as direct expressions or manifestations of hyperdimensional coherence unfolding according to the principles of multilectic metalogic.
So the universe is constantly emerging.
That seems to be the implication. It represents the universe's inherent ongoing drive towards complexity, a continuous process of self-organization and unfolding, guided by the logic cascade from Dialectics up to Omnilectics. It describes the universe consistently striving, through these logical levels, to become more structured, more organized, more complex, and ultimately, perhaps even more conscious. It's the grand narrative of reality, realizing its own potential. Hashtag tag outro.
Wow, what an absolutely incredible journey we've just taken on this deep dive. Today, we really journeyed from the very beginning, that primordial chaos described by Dialectics, the ultimate seedbed of potential, and followed the thread all the way up to the potential universal coherence envisioned in Omnilectics. We explored how Philip Lilien's multilectic metalogic, along with its intricate mathematical formalisms, offers a truly ambitious, perhaps even revolutionary, attempt at a unified understanding of reality itself. We saw how randomness, opposition, mediation, holistic integration, and universal inclusivity aren't presented as just abstract philosophical concepts, but as fundamental logical principles that Lilien argues apply dynamically across the vastness of the cosmos, within the deep mysteries of quantum systems, throughout the vibrant complexity of biology, driving the constant innovation of technology, and even shaping the intricate fabric of human society.
And as we close out this deep dive, perhaps we can leave you with this provocative thought to ponder. If intelligence and coherence are truly intrinsic to the very fabric of the cosmos, if they are fundamental properties woven into reality, as Lilien's comprehensive framework suggests, what does that truly imply about our own consciousness? Are our minds merely complex emergent properties, sophisticated but ultimately accidental byproducts of biological computation running on neural hardware? Or could they be something more? Could they in fact be incredibly sophisticated resonance, loci, specific points of intense coherence within the universal field, actively connecting us to that universal coherence field? Are we perhaps participating directly and consciously in this ongoing great emergence? What does it mean for you, personally, to potentially be an active part of this universal coherence? Not just a passive observer looking out at a separate universe, but an integral participant in the continuous unfolding and co-creation of reality itself.
The world of multilectic metalogic, as laid out by Lilien, is undeniably vast, incredibly complex, and deeply rich with implications. It certainly offers a profound new lens through which to view absolutely everything. We highly encourage you, if this has sparked your interest, to explore the source material further, to grapple with these ideas yourself, and allow them to potentially reshape your perspective on the fundamental interconnectedness of everything around you and within you. Until next time, keep diving deep.